this lesson, we're going to continue solving equations and inequalities, but we are going to be specifically looking at equations that involve a variable expression in the denominator. So up until now, you may have had equations that have a number in the denominator like this. But what we are going to be focusing on in today's lesson is going to be what happens when instead of a number, we have a variable. Looking at our first example, what we have to realize is that once we have an unknown in our denominator, like we do x, we have to remember that anything divided by a 0 is going to give us an undefined answer. So we know that even though we don't know what this variable is, we know that at the very least, it cannot be 0. So we know that we have to solve for 5 over x equals 1, but we also have to keep in mind that whatever our answer is, x cannot be equal to 0. Now let's go ahead and solve it. We would solve this very much as we would any other equation. We also want to make sure that we bring this x that's in the denominator, or actually whatever is in the denominator, it could be x, it could be x minus 5, to the numerator. And we want to do that because we're here to solve for x. We're not here to solve for 1x or 2x or anything other than just x. Now to do that, I have to do the opposite. So if I'm dividing by x, I want to go ahead and multiply by x. And when I do to one side, I have to do to both sides. This will bring me x. So this will give me x divided by x, which gives me a 1. And 1 times 5 is going to be equal to 5. And on the other side, we have x. So we have our first answer, x is equal to 5. Let's go ahead and plug it in and see if it works. We have our original right here. 5 divided by 5 is going to be equal to 1. So know that this is going to make the equation true, our first solution set. Now let's look at the second example I have here. This one's different because it has two terms as the variable expression. We know that x minus 5 cannot possibly be equal to 0 because that would just give us an undefined answer. So let's go ahead and solve it. I need to take this x minus 5 out of the denominator and put it in the numerator so I can go ahead and start solving for just x. And to do that, I'm going to multiply each side by x minus 5. X minus 5 divided by x minus 5 is going to give me a 1. And 1 times 1 is going to give me a 1. I'm going to use my derivative property here. So I have 3 times x, that's going to give me a 3x. And 3 times negative 5 is going to give me a negative 15. I'm going to move this negative 15 to the other side by adding 15. And then I'm going to have 15 equals 3x. Divide each side by 3. X is going to be equal to 15 over 3, which is going to be equal to 5. Now let me go ahead and plug it in. If I were to put a 5 in here, 5 minus 5 is going to give me a 0, which cannot be true, so this would not be part of my solution set. In this case, we would say that this has no solution.